This video is a demonstration in regards to how to set up an IV plump pump. We're going to set up a primary line and then we're going to set up a secondary IV piggyback. The first thing that we're going to do is we're going to take our primary fluid, and this happens to be 5% dextrose and sodium chloride. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to utilize the primary plumb set tubing. I'm going to take the paper off the tubing. And then what I'm going to do, remember there are two ports on this IV bag. This one is to cannulate and spike the bag with your tubing, and this next one here beside it is a medication adding port. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull off the rubber stopper, and then I'm going to pull off the cap of my spike. I'm going to keep it sterile, and I'm going to push it into this bag, okay, kind of back and forth, okay. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to hang this bag of fluid up on the IV pole. The first thing I'm going to do is milk the drip chamber until I fill the chamber halfway or to the line. The next thing I'm going to do with this IV tubing is I'm going to hang on to the handle. I'm going to turn the hole because the cassette goes in this way with the blue clave on the top. I'm going to turn it upside down. I'm going to pull out the flange in behind, fill this chamber, and when it hits the round circle, flip it over. Then I'm going to continue to let the fluid prime the line until all of the air has been removed from the line. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the tubing and place it into the machine. Okay. And then what I'm going to do is close the lever. I'm going to turn the pump on. It goes through a self-test process. And then what I'm going to do is set the pump before I attach it to the patient. You have an A and a B. The A is the primary line that I'm going to be running of D5 and 1/2 and 0.9 normal saline. So what I'm going to do is this bag of fluid, this 500 bag of fluid, 500 ml, needs to run over 4 hours. So in order to figure out IV flow rate, you take the amount, which is 500, divide it by the time, 4 hours, and that will equal 125 mLs per hour. Remember, that's how the pump works, not counting drops or drips. So I'm going to set the rate at 125. My volume is 500. Down arrow, put your volume in. There's no medication in this fluid, so you don't need to go to therapy. Before I start this, I'm going to put my gloves on, and I'm going to flush the INT and then connect this to the patient and run it. Again, remember when you're flushing an INT, 2 to 3 mLs of saline, of sodium chloride, is what you're going to flush with. What I'm going to do is, again, I'm going to clean the clave for 15 seconds. Then I'm going to take my flush and I'm going to push it in and turn it to the right. What I'm going to do is, as I flush, I'm going to palpate the insertion site to make sure. I'm going to, first of all, pull back to see if I can get a blood return. If I don't get a blood return, then I'm going to flush over 15 seconds, 2 mLs of sodium chloride, making sure that the area above the insertion site of the IV catheter doesn't get swollen or infiltrated. Now, if I continue to hold this, I'm going to just clean it again 15 seconds. That's what they advocate us. Every time you access this, we got to clean it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the clear cover off the end of my primary line. I'm going to let the locking cover fall down over it. I'm going to push it in and turn it and lock it in place. Then I'm going to start my pump and allow it to run. Now I'm going to add a secondary IV piggyback of gentamicin. And this gentamicin is 100 mLs, and it needs to go in 20 minutes. So you can either take the amount, which is 100 divided by 20 minutes times 60 minutes in an hour, or you can use the clock method. There are 3 20 minutes in 1 hour, so you're going to multiply 3 times 100, and you would set this at 300 per hour. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is hang a secondary line into the clave into the cassette. A secondary line is shorter than a primary line. Secondary lines are changed every 24 hours when interrupted. Primary lines are changed every 96 hours. The first thing that you're going to do with your tubing is take the roll clamp and clamp it. The next thing that you're going to do is take off the little rubber stopper, and then you're going to take your spike of your tubing and you're going to go back and forth and cannulate the secondary. You're going to hang it up. You're not going to prime the line like you would another line. What you're going to do is you're going to take an alcohol wipe, and you're going to clean the clave for 15 seconds. You're going to take the protective cover off. Caution, keep it sterile. You're going to push it in and turn it to the right until it locks in place. You're going to open up the secondary fluid. And what we want you to do, if the patient, of course, was shocky and needed the fluid, we would run both at once. But in this case, we're going to take the A line and we're going to stop it. Then we're going to cancel back. Now, in order for us to back prime, remember, we must make sure that the primary fluid is compatible with the gentamicin. And again, remember, dextrose and sodium chloride are compatible with almost every IV piggyback because that's what they use as a diluent to mix them. I'm going to open up my clamp and I'm going to back prime this fluid into the secondary so that you get an accurate dose. You're going to fill the drip chamber up until the line, almost halfway. Okay, and now the secondary is going to run through the B mode. Press B. The first thing that you need to do is set the medication, the therapy, before you can run it and put the fluid amount and the rate in. So I'm going to go to therapy. And what I'm going to do is page down until I find the drug gentamicin. This is a drug index that is a safety mechanism because if you set it to go too fast, it will tell you. Oops. All right, and then I'm going to find it by going down arrow. There it is, gentamicin. Enter. It's a dose calculation that we had to do to run it at 300 an hour. Choose. Always milliliter per hour unless otherwise indicated. And now I'm going to set my rate of 300 with my volume of 100. And then this pump tells you that it will go in 20 minutes, the duration, which is the correct rate. And then we're going to start it. It's telling me that line A is stopped, and I'm going to agree with that and continue anyway. Now line B is running. And this is how you would run your secondary when your primary was shut off. In order to stop the whole pump, when everything is done, when this is completed, or if it's discontinued, you're going to push stop and off.